Hi there, and welcome back to the Energy Sector Heroes podcast. My name is Michelle Fraser, and every week I will speak with incredible people who share their lessons, experiences, and stories from their time spent in the energy sector. Hi there, and welcome back again to this week's episode. If you're new to the show, then please take a second to subscribe and even consider sharing the show with just one other person. This week, I am joined by Elena Melchert. Elena is an incredible president at Endeavours Consulting and a fellow podcaster as well, which is an amazing, actually. I've listened to your podcast quite a few times. It's quite amazing. Elena, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yes, thank you. I'm delighted to be here with you today, Michelle. I'm Elena Melchert. I'm the president of Endeavours Consulting, LLC, a small business that is focused on helping my clients become more competitive for the vast amount of research funding available through the U.S. Department of Energy related to energy transition. So as part of my work as the former director for oil and gas upstream research at the U.S. Department of Energy, one of the things that I found so frustrating was there'd be a great idea, new invention, something really creative and low technology readiness level, but I couldn't choose it and have it be part of the portfolio, the research portfolio I would be building for that period, because the proposal was not well crafted. Great idea, technically sound, but there's many, many pieces to a federal proposal, research proposal. So I thought if I ever have a chance to help people, I'm going to help them. And so when I retired, I founded this small business because I couldn't stay away. Retirement didn't take. And I've been very happy with clients, and there's definitely a need for this. So I'm happy to do that.
No, that sounds amazing. So how did you get started in the energy sector then?
Oh, in the energy sector. Okay, so I from California and went to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and my undergraduate degree was in soil science. I took physics as part of the curriculum, and I guess everybody has to take it, at that school. And my physics lab partner was my future husband. I didn't know it at the time. Anyway, he graduated a year before I did. He got a job in Bakersfield, California, which is a giant oil province for the nation, especially for California. And so when we got married, I moved to Bakersfield, obviously, and I had two choices for career. One was related to agriculture because of the soils. The other, it turned out to was in oil and gas. And so the Getty Mining Company hired me, used my soils background and skills to be part of a team that was comparing two processes for the extraction of oil from a surface deposit of diatomaceous earth in Bakersfield. Bakersfield is just so prolific in terms of oil and gas that sometimes there are seeps to the top, to the surface, and the soil absorbs it and the like. Anyway, so diatomaceous earth, diatoms are little silicon skeleton water-based, ocean-based biologists. I'm sorry, I apologize to you for messing up what a diatom is. But the point is that silicon structure, skeleton, is highly porous. And so here you have this highly porous medium, amongst a highly oil rich arena. And so the diatoms would absorb the oil, real high porosity, infinite permeability. So there was this huge deposits of oil-bearing diatomaceous earth just outside of Bakersfield, California, and Getty Mining Company was looking after that. So I was part of the laboratory team there, and that's how I understood the relationship of the geologic structure all the way from the surface all the way down to pay zone, if you will. Getty gave me an opportunity to move to the oil and gas company. And I said I was interested as an engineering technician. Then I was looking at an MBA program. I entered and they said, well, instead of MBA, you should consider petroleum engineering and we'll pay for it. So they put me into a program at the University of Southern California. Some of the classes were taught in Bakersfield by, USC professors and associate professors. And then half of the curriculum, half of the work was in Los Angeles at USC. So, and they gave me a car, and I wasn't the only one. There was, a team of us who would go over the mountains from Bakersfield to Los Angeles for this petroleum engineering curriculum. And so I finished this work. In the meantime, Getty Oil Company was purchased by Texaco USA. And now, people who are new to the industry, Texaco was purchased by Chevron. So that's sort of the lineage there. I was in the production side at Getty Oil Company and with Texaco, and then with the Department of Energy, I was hired as a production engineer for a shallow deposit of oil, like 1,000-foot pay zone, and the shallow oil zone, Potter Sand. And then I had the privilege of moving over to reservoir engineering after about a year. And I loved reservoir. That is my calling. I am a reservoir engineer. That's what I do. And then I had a chance to go to Washington, D.C. for a leadership program with the Department of Energy. And so moved to Washington, D.C., and then eventually became the director for Upstream oil and gas research, and I have a career in the oil business of 41 years. I have almost 42 now, and worked for the government for like 36 years of those. My time in Bakersfield was all in commercial oil field operations, production, and like I said, reservoir, partly in about 4 years in the private sector and then 4 years with the federal government. So, but my whole career is primarily with the federal government. And I retired in 2021, in August of 2021. And like I said, it didn't take. I was always online looking, following seminars and just, LinkedIn, there's a seminar over here, Society of Petroleum Engineers, just was very connected to it. And my husband says, oh, you're not ready to retire. You should do something. You should form a company, know a lot of people. And so I did. And so that's where we are now.
So you decided not to retire. Was that a big decision for you, or were you just not ready yet?
So retiring was a big decision. Not retiring was easy because I don't actually work full time. I take on projects and clients as I like. I work on projects, and so they have start and stop. So I have a lot of free time, perhaps at odd times. But I'm fully engaged with what I do, and it's still related to research. I guess what I really missed was the brain candy, working, in terms of policy, technology interface, the research, translating concepts, if you will, for people outside the oil and gas sector who, at the Department of Energy and for the federal government. I had a short stint at the White House as well, but translating, what technology options, what policy options are created by technology, and then pursuing a research portfolio that would execute on policy options that were policies that were put into place. So that policy technology interface is where I've always worked, or most of my career has been, and it's just been really fascinating, domestic as well as international. So.
Okay. Because you were saying before, right at the beginning of your career, that you were involved in, I think it was reviewing the technology to, if I'm even getting that right.
No, I'm sorry, I did confuse you.
On how you extract the oil from the soil. That must have been fascinating.
It was. So that was my intro to oil and gas. As a soil scientist, the ore, which was surface, right, soil, was processed through two plants that they were comparing. One was a retort process, heat, sort of like huge distillation column, like 9 stories of distillation column, and then pulling the oil out in one feed, and then the spent ore in another feed. They were comparing that with a solvent process, wash tanks, move the ore from tank to tank to tank, and then leaving the oil behind and just sort of washing it out of that ore. That was my exposure to the oil business. I didn't know how they produced oil. but it was for Getty Mining Company. They did know how to produce oil. And so they were doing this experiment. And then I had the opportunity to move from this pilot project into mainstream oil and gas production for Getty Oil Company. Very beginning of my career as an engineering technician, working with the field, working with the engineers, and really boots in the field for like 8 years. Worked 4 years for Getty Company, and then moved to the Department of Energy at a giant oil field that the government owned in partnership with Chevron USA, called Elk Hills. So I'm sorry for that confusion. You see how it goes.
Yeah, but it must be, but starting off with such a major role in the oil industry, you must have seen a lot of technology changes over the years.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think the most dramatic change now these days is considered quite mundane, but we did not have, personal computers when I started my career. Everything was, pencil. A spreadsheet was a lined piece of paper with 1,000 columns, 1,000 rows that you fill in with a pencil. That's how we did, some of these big calculations was just, each column sort of multiplied, divided, or whatever. That translated into, so the first spreadsheet I used was called Lotus 123. And that was sort of the very beginning. So having computer to do word processing, certainly, PowerPoints, being able to use communication, as well as these calculations was really, really dramatic. I mean, I was witness to some of the very earliest digitization maps, base maps, various kinds of maps, logs, whatever, in order to start into the modeling sector. When I worked on a computer, when I first started, there wasn't a PC. There was only mainframe with terminals that you would kind of go and use a terminal. We didn't have our own terminal. We had to share a terminal. Like 4 or 5 of us would share a terminal. These strategically placed terminals around the building for us to be able to access and input data. And then you have to wait a long time for results. I mean, it was just very, very cumbersome. So then the next thing was the advent of personal computers, but again, it wasn't as sophisticated as a laptop. It looked like the first one I had was like the size of a sewing machine. I don't know if people know what that looks like, but maybe by 2 by 3 feet. Clunky old thing to carry it around. Was a mobile computer. Having a PC at your desk was in between that time. But right now, I mean, to have so much computational capability on your telephone is just so exciting. It's just, although it means you can never hide, but you definitely are always working. But still, the technology has been fabulous. And then, of course, all of the algorithms that have been developed. And now we're moving into AI. I mean, it's just so exciting, the time that we're living. And the oil and gas sector is a place where we really can maximize and, in fact, burn out memory. That was the first thing that would happen, was there was never enough memory to solve some of these calculations, the modeling calculations, that would integrate, sort of natural systems with engineered systems, right? I mean, engineering calculations, we kind of know those and measure the data or whatever, but trying to describe a reservoir in mathematical terms so that you put it into the computer was, that was really, really the work. So this little machine would sort of, you'd punch a dot and it would give you a location. You'd move over and punch another dot, and you'd sort of dot your way around, the shape of the reservoir, if you will, something like that, over the maps. It was very tedious. And so now it's just everything's digitized now. It's just so exciting.
No, it is exciting. It's exciting and amazing how far technology has come in even just such a short space of time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So who was your role model and why did you find them inspirational?
Oh, gosh. So I don't know that I would have one role model. I guess my first role model, my first 2 role models were my parents. My parents worked very hard. My mother was brilliant. And my father was very, very keen. My mother was, I want to say, book smart, and my father was street smart. Perhaps that's the way to put it. And so they worked very hard. They provided, everything we needed to be successful. They were always very encouraging. And so they did not go to college, but they sent me to college. They sent us to college. And that was kind of the best thing, although I didn't know what I wanted to major in when I first started in school. And in the end, I ended up changing majors like 6 times. My dad finally cut me off and said, "You're going to have to finish." And I did. And I did. But so in terms of actual, people, I would have to say my parents were my greatest role models. But I often say this to people when I'm coaching or mentoring, and as I say, you don't have just one mentor. You should have the world as your mentor. Anyone that you think has something that you want, watch them, track them, talk with them, engage with them. It doesn't have to be a formalized mentorship relationship for you to learn what you want to learn from them. So in that respect, I've had, hundreds of mentors, including people who did things that I don't think they were good things to do, or, bad examples of behavior. And so you would learn I learned not to do that just by watching sort of the impact of their interactions with people. So yeah, I've had, I want to say 1 million mentors and coaches and role models, and I'm still open and watching for more as I continue to grow.
Okay. If you were going to be mentored by anybody, even now or during your early career, who would it be?
That's a good question. Gosh, I'm really stuck on that. I'm trying to think of who. So, who I think about, although I'm not really, following, that carefully, although we can't ignore, the president of Ukraine, his courage from not being a formally trained person in the area of history and politics and those things that prepare you for public service, being an actor, certainly an observer, keen observer of people, I guess is the way to put it, but to have him take on that challenge of, running for president, being president, starting to run president, and then to face such a formidable foe who is able to stare down people, much less attack people. So his courage and his willingness to put his life, so much of himself in front of the world on behalf of his people, leadership in a way that you don't see often. And so right now, that's who I'm impressed by, that kind of courage to just don't give up, just stand your ground and don't give up and continue to push for what you need. So I guess that's who that would be.
Okay. No, he is quite amazing, actually. I do agree. So what is the most challenging thing in your career that you've had?
Oh gosh, there's so many challenges. You don't work, this long in such a highly visible, necessary field like oil and gas and not face challenges. I guess early on, from a personal point of view, figuring out what I would do with my life, where I studied. I told you I changed majors so many times. The reason I changed so many times was because I had a lot of options, but I also was looking for something that would really consume me, really would take all of my capabilities and really challenge me, intellectually, physically, emotionally. And I couldn't find anything that really caught me that much. And that's because I had never been exposed to real science. I had never been exposed to real scientists. I mean, all the people that I encountered who were in those kinds of spaces were all men. I never saw women. I never saw Hispanic women, in those kinds of exciting research areas or scientific areas. I remember I was a Girl Scout and I would go the most interesting badge I went after was the geology badge. You need to collect rocks and compare them and like that. And I thought that was interesting. Was kind of sciencey, that kind of thing. And when I started, my first major was in business administration. that didn't do it for me, especially when there were so few women in business. They were mostly men. And in those days, college was a different kind of, I mean, people would smoke in the classroom. My classes were mostly men, and it's like good old boy time. I mean, this is a long, long time ago. Good old boy time. So women just really didn't have a voice, didn't have a space. And then it was early on, it's in the early 70s. And I remember my marketing class in business, the professor said to me, well, Miss Subia, what is the female point of view on this question? I was 19. I didn't know what my own opinion was on many things, much less that representing my whole gender. So, that didn't work out for me. And I kept looking, and I finally stumbled on science was related to horticulture plants and what makes plants grow, fertilizers. And then, what's fertilizer? Well, it's part of enhancing the soil. Oh, soil. Oh, so then I started learning about soil as part of, curriculum. And I realized that is what I like. It's complicated. It's chemical, physical, biological properties. And that's just laying there. You start having human interaction with it, and you can really change and amend and work with it. And it has so many uses. It plays such a role in life. I mean, it started to fit all of the things that were important to me. So when I got into oil and gas, I was kind of concerned about, I mean, only knowing, California, not even knowing the rest of the country, and then certainly not having started a career with respect to international. I was kind of saying, well, big oil, people aren't really enamored of big oil or whatever. And I started understanding that oil energy is life. And if you don't have the energy that you need, you cannot pursue, your highest self. So I heard someone recently say, if you know how to read, think a teacher. But if you know how to read at night, think your teacher and your energy worker, because without light at night, how could you ever get past your chores of the day and then be able to even just read, just learn, much less learn higher learning and apply your highest self to some of the world's greatest problems. So now when I talk about, oil, gas and being an energy professional, people ask me what you do. And I say, well, I'm helping to end world poverty, because you have to have energy for anything that you do. And I help supply the world with energy.
That's a good message.
I'm proud of what I do. I love, this sector. I love what we do. So.
I do too. Because I was just thinking I could relate to a lot of what you were saying, especially when I started out as an engineer as well. Going to university, I was maybe one of the only females that was in the university classes. How did you actually find that?
In petroleum engineering, working. So I guess it was part of, life, the women's movement, or, the whole notion of gender equality and all that really wasn't, it was just in the early stages. There was just so much still traditional point of view and roles for women or whatever. So it was that time of change, but it certainly wasn't. I remember my first time, I'm not going to say where, I wore a dress to work, oil business, and someone whistled at me. And I thought, I thought we were past that, right? It wasn't, it was hard. It was hard. And I don't know, I think, women have always had to, put their best foot forward and really rise to the challenge of being challenged. But, academically, education really helps equalize everyone. And so being able to hold my own in a technical discussion gave me confidence. And, the more I did it, the more comfortable I became. And that's just how, I think everyone, rises. Certainly male engineers who go and get into a technical debate or whatever, they have to hold their own as well. I think women have to be a little bit better, but that's not the point. I mean, it really is about getting into, I want to say, the facts and the science and the measurements and like that, those kinds of technical discussions. We're really, using all that you have. Those are the challenges that I enjoyed, and those are the challenges that I learned a lot from. So.
Okay.
But it was tough. It was tough in the beginning. Of course, now I just got back from the Offshore Technology Conference, which is the largest oil and gas show in the world, as you know. And it's the only place where there's not a line in front of the women's room, even though there's thousands of people there and there are a lot of women. But I used to go to OTC and I'd see like, I don't know, 2 or 3 women for every 100, right? Just a very small percentage. Now I'm not quite seeing half, but I'm certainly seeing like a good third plus of the participants there were women, and certainly lots of women on the technical program presenting papers and the like. So that's always very exciting. But that's one of the key places that I notice, how many more women there are in the oil and gas sector.
Yeah, because I'm linked in with quite a lot of female engineers as well. So there is quite a lot of them coming through now, which is it's good and an exciting thing to see as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And all that young brains and energy to, tackle the tough challenges we still have. So.
Yeah. You were saying before that you think that you needed a job that was really going to be challenging for you to use all your skills. Do you think that's really important to have in a job?
Yeah, I do. Well, let me start again. I think that that's important for me. And the fact that I am a high energy person, I just have to be doing something. I have to keep it thinking, keep it moving. I mean, everybody's not the same. We need, people who are comfortable with jobs that don't take so much energy, but they last longer. I mean, I get bored easy. I guess that's my thing, is I get bored easy. So I have to keep pushing on that. But I'm grateful for people who have far more patience for the longer term. I mean, talk about sprinters and marathoners, right? I'm definitely the sprinter type, but you definitely need the marathoners as well. So for me, yeah, I think it's important. And I think the more that of yourself that you can bring to the workspace, then the more satisfying. And then there's the ethical side of work, right? The more of yourself, the more of your honor, the more of your values that you bring to your work, then, I mean, that's real important, I think, for everyone. That's part of humanity.
Okay, excellent. Is there anything that you still want to achieve in your career, even though you've retired?
Yeah. Is there anything I still want to achieve? Well, I have a lot of accomplishments. I guess I'm really happy right now. When you're working, in a professional setting, you really don't end at 5 o'clock or whatever. You're just, because it's brain candy. So I love that brain candy. But it can get ahead of you. You can be like working too much, like workaholism or whatever. I mean, I don't want to be there. Right now, I'm working on really, really fun projects, including the podcast. The podcast is a lot of fun too. I'm working on a lot of really fun projects that take time, but they don't take up all of my time. And so I am learning a little bit more how to slow down, a little bit more, taking on, engaged in more community activities. I'm more active in my church. I'm more active in politics. Well, I was not allowed to be active in politics when I was working for the government. But now that I'm not working for the government, I can explore that a little bit more. Supporting causes that I believe in, that's a real important thing. And as it turns out, in some of that volunteer work, a lot of the skills that I learned while I was working have come into play. So I think that I didn't think about it until you asked me, but I think I'm actually in this place where I have the right work-life balance that I always wanted to have. And so now I have it, and that's kind of good. And I'm so glad you asked me that question, because I hadn't really thought about it. But yeah, I'm happy now. So in terms of, do I want to achieve that? I guess I want things for my daughter. I want her to be able to build her career and, do the things that she wants to do. And so I'm coaching, I'm mentoring her. So I'm doing that. So I think I'm there.
So you were saying, what is your biggest achievement that you think that you've had throughout?
Oh, my biggest achievement in my life is having a good, strong marriage. We've been married 41 years. and 42 in October. And we have a wonderful, beautiful daughter who's an astronautics engineer. And she's married now to a wonderful person. And so they're happy and they just bought their first house. So so my family, I think, is, my greatest achievement, contributing. My greatest achievement. We wanted to have more children. We weren't blessed that way, but we're grateful for the daughter that we did have.
No, that's amazing. That's really a nice message, actually. A family is really important. It's really important to me as well, actually.
Yeah.
So, have you had any career disasters?
Oh, career disasters. I probably have, and I'll think about it as I'm talking here and see if I can come up with a good example. But words like disaster, I try to catastrophe, I try to take them out of my vocabulary. And I tried to do that early on, because when you've got a problem, you've got a challenge, you got to deal with something. I mean, there's no magic wand that's going to make it go away. I mean, you just have to work through things. You have to work through it. And I realized that the language I use to myself even kind of frames it in a way that's not, it adds negative emotion rather than freeing up creative energies. And so I try to take those words out of my vocabulary. But gosh, well, working for the government, I served 7 presidents. And so the president's goals and objectives are always, what were in play. So disasters, I guess, catastrophes, they weren't my catastrophes, they were mostly their catastrophes. And then I would be part of, the team to help build. Did you say catastrophes or career catastrophes? So it's career, probably not, but actually I was part of the Deepwater Horizon, the President's Commission on the Deepwater Horizon. So that was a tragedy that happened, and that was a very painful experience. But I forgot, which did you ask me?
I asked you, have you had any career disasters?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would say no. I would say I'm trying to think. I mean, I moved to Bakersfield, moved to Washington, D.C. I didn't have any setbacks. So I would have to say no career disasters. Maybe if anything, I would say that being such a supporter for oil and gas, that I, really, as I grew my career, as I learned and understood more the role of oil and gas in terms of overall energy. And then finding that the latest administration that I worked for, the last administration I worked for, was less than supportive of oil and gas, then that was part of my decision to retire. I certainly had been retirement eligible for a long time before I actually retired. It was kind of like not so much fun anymore. So I think, retiring was certainly not something that I would have done quite yet if if there had been more support for oil and gas. But I wouldn't call that a disaster, catastrophe or anything. It was just something, And then when I started my company, Energia Consulting, I realized I probably should have done this a long time ago because I'm having so much fun. So that's the other thing.
Okay. If you were going to hire anybody in your previous roles, what kind of skills and attributes would you look for in a person?
Yeah. So the fit to the culture, I think, is what is the most important in public service, because the team that remains in place after administrations change to either continue the direction that they were going in if the administration was supportive of it, or to be able to pivot it with a new administration, that fit is really about a teamwork, a team. So if someone could have really fabulous technical skills, but if they didn't play well with others, that would be a showstopper. And having a team that's highly effective and the synergies of your skill sets are really important. So the main thing would be to have people who are honorable, work hard, and have respect for others such that they can, play well with others and also bring out the best in others, their colleagues, their team members. That's the kind of, person I looked for. Yeah.
No, that's amazing. That's amazing advice. Thank you. So what is your zone of genius? What are you really good at?
I am good at helping large, diverse groups of people move in the same direction. I discovered that when I was a Girl Scout leader for my daughter. I was a Girl Scout when I was young, and I wanted to bring that experience to my daughter. And of course, I worked, and a lot of the other moms, friends, were not available during, at 3:00 in the afternoon when school would be over. So we were a weekend troop, and we would meet once a month on the weekend on a Saturday, and we did a lot of camping. But that's what we did. And I realized that you really have to help people find a reason to move in the direction that you want them to go. So that was what that's what I learned then, and I am still able to do that. Help people move in the same direction, and help people understand, what's stopping them or stopping others from moving in that direction.
How would you typically do that, though? Because that's like quite a difficult task to do, actually.
It is a difficult task. It's a very difficult task. But first of all, you have to establish relationship. People have to like you. You can't just tell somebody what to do. Volunteers are, perfect example. People don't have to do, if you have position power because you're somebody's boss or you're paying somebody or whatever, that's different. But I'm talking about, being able to work with people and understanding what is the common ground, common things that we have together. And then, what's in it for them in terms of the larger goal. And it's very, it's labor intensive. It's relationship intensive, but it really does involve connecting with people. And so I think I connect with people, or I can connect with people. And so then that helps us, kind of find that common ground and then able to move in that direction. Also, there's a certain element of organizational skill, being able to organize in a way that people don't feel like their time is being wasted, that there's some alignment with what they want to do or how they like to operate. And so setting, just saying, oh, well, we'll figure it out. Well, okay, when you figure it out, you call me, I'll let you know. But having sort of a construct that's got enough framework for people to trust it, but yet enough flexibility that if something doesn't work out, then you are able to pivot. So I think, yeah, it's a hard work, but it's doable. But not everybody enjoys it, and I enjoy it. So that's the other part of it.
Okay. So how do you get people to typically trust you then?
Well, I think that there's a certain element of authenticity. You present who you are, and, people are going to like you or they're not going to like you. And if they don't like you, if there's a reason, you can kind of work through that and find out what is it that you like or don't like or whatever. There's things about yourself that you can change or not change or adjust or reflect. But I think that most people are open to other people. But yeah, you have to have a certain level of trust. And that trust comes from presenting your authentic self.
That is amazing advice, actually. Because being authentic is quite an important skill and asset that you should have.
Yeah. And I understand what you're saying. It is, I want to say hard. It's not hard. It is having, knowing yourself and knowing your strengths and weaknesses and, expressing your strengths, and then with your weaknesses, having, asking for help. Everybody doesn't know everything. Few people know everything. Nobody knows everything, right? And so we have our sort of specialty things, and not everybody likes to do everything. So the notion of, who you are and recognizing that you have weaknesses, that you have faults, that you're not perfect or whatever, that humility, I think, comes across to people. And and that's your authentic self. And yeah, some people are not happy with me. Some people don't like me. I mean, that's the reality of it. But I don't hold it against them. I still try to like them. But being your authentic self, I think, is the easiest way to bring that connection. Once you have that connection, then there's place for forgiveness, trust and forgiveness. So.
I agree. I do agree. So how does your previous roles compare to your aspirations as a young girl?
Oh, let's see. When I was a young girl, I read all the time. I mean, I was born and raised until 12 years old in a city called Oceanside, California. And it's everything that the name implies. It's paradise on earth, although I did not know it. It was a sleepy little beach town. It had a library. I mean, it had, the basics or whatever, but I wanted more. And so on Saturdays, I could walk to the library. I could walk to the beach, but most of the time I walked to the library, and I would spend like all day there until my mother would come and pick me up because it was too late. Where are you? Where are you? And I read all the time. And I couldn't get enough of all of these adventures that, girls or kids would go on, And I remember there was two sections to the library. There was the kids' entrance, they had story time and all that stuff. And then there was the grown-ups entrance. And of course, kids didn't go into the grown-up side. But I remember I would purposely go through the front door of the grown-up side to pass through the library in order to get to the kids' section. And I just remember how impressed I was with all of these books everywhere, books, all this beautiful knowledge, I thought, all these wonderful things inside those books. And so I always wanted something to do with those books. And I played teacher, at home when I was younger. I would be the teacher. Whatever books we had in the house, notepads or whatever, I'd set them up. I'd have like a desk, right? And I'd set up all my dolls and whatever to be my students and all that stuff. So that sounds funny now, but now I've seen the parallels. I love talking with people. I love sharing what I know, and I love learning new things. And so that brings in the research that I'm so fond of. It brings in the podcast thing about, talking with people, and it's, integrated in a way that I didn't, I was living it when I was younger, but I'm still living it now. So I think I actually grew up to do what I always wanted to do, as it turns out.
No, that's amazing, because not a lot of people get to do that, though.
I didn't do it on purpose. I mean, it ended up that way. I kept making choices, I think, of the things that I like, and it just kept building. I don't know that I could have ever fashioned a career the way that I did. It just was lucky, and I took advantage of the opportunities.
Okay. Do you think that you need a certain percentage of luck to be really successful, though?
I think that luck is something that, how can I say this? Preparation is what you need, right? Pursuing something, mastering your craft, if you will. That is important. So then when an opportunity comes along, you're able to take advantage of it. To someone who doesn't know how long you've prepared or how long you've wanted or whatever, been like positioning yourself, someone doesn't know that, it looks like luck. So I do think that you have to have the right place at the right time for opportunities, that kind of luck. But you also have to be, prepared so that when something comes up, you're able to take advantage of it.
Okay. Because not a lot of people take advantages of some opportunities that come across their way.
I agree. That is the saddest thing, for someone to not take advantage. And usually people don't take advantage. I have found that people don't take advantage because they fear, they're afraid, they're holding themselves back because they think they have to be perfect in order to take advantage of the opportunity. And you don't. You just have to have a certain amount of confidence in yourself that whatever it is you're going to learn, and that, people are going to want you to be successful, and you just keep working hard, and you will kind of like get there. You'll grow into the position. You don't have to be perfect before you start. So I think there's a certain amount of that.
I agree, actually. I do agree. I think a fear holds a lot of people back from taking on new roles or opportunities.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I almost didn't. So with my consultancy, my husband saw me like listening to webinars and things on technical things or whatever, anything that was like advertised on LinkedIn to SPE or whatever. And he said, you really should just start some sort of a consultant. You should, you know so many people, you know so many things. People want to know. And I said, no. But the more he encouraged me, the more I thought about it, I said, okay, I will found a business. I'll get some business cards and then I'll start, seeing what happens. And then it came to, so that was like March and April of 2022. And then it came to registration for OTC. And I just thought, well, what am I going to do? I mean, I can't go to OTC because for the past 20 years at OTC, I was either a presenter, a moderator, hosting someone, of a dignitary from Washington to come and kind of experience OTC and like that. And I was always there until it was the first year. So after COVID, right? It was the first big year where people were returning to OTC and I wasn't going to be there. And I was just so frustrated. And he says, well, what's the matter? I said, well, everybody's going to be in OTC. I'm going to be left out. And he says, well, why don't you go? I go, well, what am I going to do there? He says, well, you've got a company. Take those business cards and share them with people. Tell them about your company and that kind of thing. So I almost didn't go to OTC. And I ended up picking up my first client at OTC. So, I'm glad that I went. I'm glad that people were so receptive to it. I'm mostly grateful to my husband for encouraging me. So people have to have a support system, I think, as well. It's hard to do it all by yourself, especially when you're taking a real scary step, which you think is scary.
I think so too. I think it's important to have a good support system. And I think also, even if you think that an opportunity that presents itself is going to be scary, it's probably not going to be as bad as you think it's going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you completely. Yes, it's not going to be as bad as you think because you can really think of scary things. Few things are that scary. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So what's the scariest thing you've ever had happen to you then during your career?
Going to the White House was the scariest thing I ever did. I wanted to go. There was certainly a contribution that I could make. But after working in the government and understanding how, things work or whatever, and the White House is a separate space being, I want to say temporary, 4-8 years at the most, lots of change, lots of transition, things, lots of moving parts. And so I was a little anxious about that, but I did it. And I realized, it's really, you have to bring your A+ game and you have to bring your physical stamina and you really have to be able to work well with others. I mean, that really is a success path. But I didn't know that. I thought everybody there was going to be smarter than me, younger than me, and, just better than me in all ways because it was the White House. And so that was a scary thing, but I was encouraged and I went, and it was 6 months, but it was really exciting and it gave me a lot of insights to how the world works. In fact, how power happens and moves things and people.
That's exciting. For me, that would be exciting to go, even to just go to the White House would be exciting. But to work there.
Yeah.
Must have been
it's a really hard job. It's a really hard job. There is no downtime because anything can happen anywhere in the world. Anything can happen. And somebody has to respond, right? Some way, even if it's just advising, the president, but you don't just advise, you have to come up with options. You have to think it through. So it was really, really hard work. And I'm really grateful of the people who spend the time doing that in a career. But I don't know if you see this kind of turnover in your government, but in our government, there's always, a turnover. People will do something for so long and then they'll stop. And it's kind of like, well, why did they stop? Because it's such a demanding place to be that people move on for a good reason, right? It's just, you do the most that you can. And then every 6 months, the world changes. Every 6 months. So you're constantly working really hard doing something, and then you've got to rise to the occasion for something else. And then 6 months later, rise to the occasion for something else. It's hard. It's hard at that level. And I'm grateful that people are willing to serve.
Okay. No, I think that would be amazing. No, I just think it would be an amazingly exciting role to be in, to work in the White House. And I did actually hear that working in politics can be really challenging as well.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I served in a technical role, advising people about technical options related to oil and gas, and then that information went to the political, actors, obviously the president. So, but what I did was I helped develop the national energy policy for the Bush Cheney Energy Task Force, and it was related to oil and gas technology. And so it was hard. It was hard work. It was exhausting work. I'm happy I did that. And then I was happy to go back to the Department of Energy. And of course, that gave me insights that I did not have before. And so my work at the Department of Energy was also enhanced.
But that's a huge role, though, that you did.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool.
A huge role and quite a big achievement to have done that.
Yeah, yeah. Obviously, I didn't do it alone, right? I mean, I worked with people from the various agencies that have a role in oil and gas, and of course, that was exciting to work with really smart people on something I really enjoy working on and like that. So yeah, it was a privilege. It was definitely a privilege.
So, what was the biggest lesson that you took away from working there?
I guess I didn't realize how 24/7, 365 the work is. When you're part of that level of government, you can't sleep. I mean, things are always happening. Just at a minimum, our time difference, right? I'm what, almost 2:00, and what time are you there? 2:00 in the afternoon.
Yeah, 8:00. Yeah.
Yeah. See, I mean, so just the time change. I'm, still peaking at my energy level. You're probably ready to call it a day soon. And so that things happen while you're asleep. You come up the next morning and something happened, those kinds of things. So there's always this kind of readiness posture that you need to be in. So it was tough. It was tough.
But that must be really tough to even just live in that, even just for a short period of time, though.
It was. I was, my daughter was 8 years old, 7 years old. So that was it was a hard time. It was a rigorous time, I want to say. It was a challenge. I loved it, but I was satisfied with my work, and I was happy to move on when the project was over. So it was a good thing. And actually I was there in 2021, middle of 2021, and then, before September. Before September 11th. And so I was back at the Department of Energy on September 11th. And I kept thinking about the people in the White House, how there was just, what were they thinking? What were they doing? How were they going to manage? It was a very scary time for the whole world, the country, certainly. Very scary time. I was happy that I was not in that environment during that time, that I was in a more predictable, more stable environment at the time. But it was, that was scary. I still have thoughts of it, because I was at Pentagon City, which is a place of hotels and shopping in Pentagon City, just outside of the Pentagon, just beyond the Pentagon, like a mile from the Pentagon. I mean, not far. And so I was at a hotel at a conference at Pentagon City on September 11th, the morning of. And when the plane hit the Pentagon, I felt the first shock, right? And then the compression wave as well. So, but I didn't know what it was. It was kind of like a boom, boom kind of a thing. And we didn't know what it was. And it was on fire. And we were saying, well, what's over there? Well, there's nothing over the Pentagon. Well, it's not the Pentagon. What could be over there? It could be on fire. So come to as a story unfolded, and we learned everything. We realized just how close to danger we truly were. So I'm glad I wasn't at the White House, and I was out of central part of DC and out in Virginia already. So the Metro just put Metro buses in place and evacuated as many people to Virginia and to Maryland as could fit. But standing room only on these buses, because the Metro was not running through DC anymore. So just trying to like scatter, get away from town. It was a scary day.
It would have been a scary day. It would have been a scary day. It would have been even hectic, and maybe I can't even think of words to say. It must have been really challenging for the White House and everybody who had to deal with trying to get a solution for that.
Right. And of course, they put the president in the air, get him on the way. And I guess there's protocols. I mean, obviously there's protocols, but it was something that was really never before experienced. So there was a lot of people rising to the occasion to come up with solutions. And then so many people were hurt. So there was a lot of emergencies on many sides. Yeah. Let's talk about something else.
I know. I don't know what to say, because I can't even believe that you were near. Yeah, you were quite close to it.
I was quite close to it. Yeah, I was quite close to it. And we had so many people from work out of town, like in either other cities or even in other countries. And so then those people had a challenge to try to get back home because planes were not flying. So there was a lot of disruption. Children were afraid. We went to pick up our daughter at school and brought her home. But then all we could do was like watch the television to see what was going on, so that if there was something else going to happen, that we would be, aware. So, yeah, it was a very, very scary period. And I'm grateful that, and hope we never see anything like that again.
No, I hope so too. Wow. So what would if you were going to encourage anybody to come into the energy sector, what advice would you give them?
Well, first, I'd encourage them that energy is fundamental to life, right? I mean, we eat food because we need the energy, and we have various energy forms in order to work, to do things. So I'd say energy is a wonderful sector to come into. Next, I would say that any part of the economy that you're interested in, if you're interested in business, if you're interested in accounting, if you're interested in marketing, if you're interested in analytics, if you're interested in computers, if you're interested in working outside, if you're working in science, any aspect, medical field, any aspect of the economy that you'd be interested in working in, there's a place for it in the energy sector, and including the oil and gas sector. And I'd say that there are as research goes forward, there's so many more opportunities. Sticking specifically with the oil and gas sector, the skill sets that we have in petroleum engineering, petroleum geology, the geosciences, all have a place in continued oil and gas, obviously, increasing ultimate recovery as the most dense fuel, but also for geothermal, also for carbon storage. There are so many applications for the kinds of skill sets that we have in the oil and gas sector. So energy is wonderful, and oil and gas is wonderful as far as career pathways.
So if you could turn back time, would you change anything?
I think I would have yes, I lost a lot of time not realizing that science was an option, that science was going to appeal to me so much. So I don't know what I could have done about that, because I didn't know. But that would be the one thing that I wish I, could have gotten started sooner. The other part is I wish I had spent more time with my parents. They're gone now. And so that, that is, you always think that, tomorrow, okay, well, next week, oh, well, time just gets away from you. Time just passes so quickly. So I would have spent more time with my parents and helping them understand what I do. They really didn't understand oil and gas to the reservoir engineering. They understood that you go to the gas station, you fill up, the gas. They understood that you turn on the light switch and you have energy, but what it takes to get energy, the supply chain, the value chain, and then all the different forms, that was something that really wasn't really interesting to them, but because they just, we're consumers, like most, Americans are just consumers and not really thinking about that. So that would be the other thing too, to have them teach them more about what I do.
Okay. Interesting. It's amazing. No, all your answers are amazing. I have to say that it's been an amazing interview, actually.
Oh, you're so fun.
One final question, actually, if I can think of it. If you could go back in time, what is one piece of advice you would give yourself, your younger self?
Oh, I think I would give myself the advice that I've given to others about don't hold back, be bold, be brave. That's the one thing I would probably tell myself, because I didn't tell myself enough of it. Other people told me, but if you don't think of it yourself, sometimes you kind of like hold back. And so that I would have listened to that more fully, listen to people encouraging you, and also don't hold back. Don't hold back. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's what I told myself earlier in life.
Thank you. And that is amazing advice. It's been an amazing interview, actually. You have so much knowledge.
Oh, you're very kind. You're very kind. I just like to talk a lot. You're very kind.
I have enjoyed myself. It's been amazing. So that's all the questions I have today. I would like to thank Elena for your time.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
That brings us to the end of another episode. Thanks for listening, and see you next week. That brings us to the end of another episode. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, I'd like to gently encourage you to leave a 5-star rating wherever you listen to podcasts, and share the show with another person. You can also follow me on LinkedIn or via my website, www.michellefraserconsultancy.com. Thanks again for listening, and see you next week.